Alira didn't know the riders on the ridge were sent by the Alpha King. She didn't know he'd been tracking her for 6 days through frozen forest and abandoned villages, following whispers of a healer who could mend what no medicine could touch. And she definitely didn't know that begging for shelter on this bitter night would shatter the fragile peace she'd built from nothing. All she knew was that her daughter was burning with fever, and the abandoned mill offered the only roof for miles. "Mama." Neve's voice was a rasp, her small body trembling against Alira's chest. "I'm cold." "I know, little one. We need shelter." The words tasted like ash. She'd said them so many times over the years, to innkeepers, farmers, strangers who looked through her like she was already a ghost. Tonight, she was saying them to no one at all. Alira pressed her lips to her daughter's forehead, feeling the unnatural heat radiating through her skin. 5 years old, and already she'd survived more than most adults. But this fever, it had come on fast. Too fast. And Alira's gift couldn't heal her own blood. The cruel irony of it never stopped cutting. The mill's door hung crooked on rusted hinges. Inside, the air smelled of damp grain and rot, but the walls blocked the wind, and that was enough. Alira laid Neve on a pile of old sacking, covering her with the threadbare cloak that was all they had left. "Stay awake for me," Alira whispered. "Can you do that?" Neve's eyes fluttered. "Tell me the story, the one about the moon." Alira's throat tightened. She'd told that story 100 times, her mother's story, passed down through generations of their bloodline. But tonight, the words felt like goodbye. She was gathering kindling for a fire when she heard it. Hoofbeats. Many of them, moving fast. Alira's blood turned to ice. She rushed to the mill's grimy window, scraping frost from the glass with her fingernails. Through the blur, she counted them. 12 riders emerging from the tree line, their horses cutting through the snow like dark blades. Warriors, armed and armored, their breath clouding in the frozen air. And at their center, one who rode without a helm. Even from this distance, something about him made her lungs forget how to work. He sat his horse like he'd been born in the saddle, broad-shouldered and still, scanning the landscape with predatory focus. When his gaze swept toward the mill, Alira jerked back from the window, her heart slamming against her ribs. They couldn't be here for her. No one knew where she was. She'd been so careful, moving every few weeks, never staying long enough to leave traces. But the riders had stopped. The leader was dismounting. "Mama!" Neve's weak voice cut through the panic. "Someone's coming." Alira looked at her daughter. Flushed, shivering, too sick to run even if running were possible. Looked at the door that wouldn't hold against a firm push, let alone armed warriors. She had no weapons, no pack, no allies. But she had her gift, and she had her daughter. And she would die before she let anyone take either. The footsteps outside were measured, deliberate, a pause. Then 3 steady knocks that somehow managed to sound more like a question than a demand. "I know you're in there." The voice was deep, edged with authority. "I'm not here to hurt you, but we need to talk, Alira." He knew her name. Alira didn't move, didn't breathe. "Your daughter is sick." The voice came again, quieter now. "I can hear her heartbeat from here. It's weak, irregular. She needs help you can't give her." How did he know? How could he possibly? "I have a healer with me. A real one, trained in the old ways. Open the door, and I swear on my blood, no harm will come to either of you." Neve whimpered, and the sound cracked something in Alira's chest. Pride meant nothing if her daughter died in this rotting mill. She crossed to the door and pulled it open. The man on the threshold was younger than his voice suggested. Perhaps 30, though his eyes held the weight of someone who'd lived several lifetimes. Dark hair fell past his collar, and a scar traced the line of his jaw from ear to chin. He was dressed in black leather and dark fur, no crown, no sigil, nothing to mark his rank except the way the warriors behind him watched his every movement, and his eyes. Storm gray, piercing, seeing straight through her walls. "You're the healer," he said. Not a question. The one they banished from Thornwick 5 years ago. Elira's stomach dropped. I don't know what you're talking about. You do. He didn't sound angry, just certain. You can mend broken bones with a touch. Stop bleeding with your hands. Pull people back from the edge of death itself. Aldrich called you an abomination and cast you out with a newborn in your arms. The words hit like physical blows. No one was supposed to know that. She'd buried that life, burned every connection, become a ghost. How? Her voice cracked. How do you know any of that? Because I've spent 3 months searching desperately for someone like you. I'd heard whispers of your gift before, rumors from the Eastern Territories, but I had no reason to seek you out. Until now. The gray eyes softened, just slightly. And because Aldrich brags about it when he's drunk, tells everyone he purged a curse from his pack. His jaw tightened. He's a fool who threw away a miracle. Behind her, Neve coughed, a wet, rattling sound that made Elira's heart seize. The stranger's gaze shifted to the child, and a shadow passed across his face. Something that looked almost like pain. Let my healer see her, he murmured. Please, whatever you decide after, at least let me help your daughter first. The word please caught her off guard. It didn't fit with the warriors, the authority, the way he'd tracked her across frozen wilderness. Why? Elira demanded. Why would you help us? What do you want? He was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with something she couldn't name. Because someone I love is dying, and you might be the only one in this world who can save her. The healer's name was Jorvin, a weathered man with kind eyes and hands that moved with practiced gentleness. He examined Neve while Elira stood rigid in the corner, watching every touch, every movement, ready to intervene at the first sign of threat. Lung fever, Jorvin announced, advanced, but not beyond help. I have herbs that will break it, but she needs warmth and rest, several days at least. Several days. Elira had been planning to move again at dawn. There's a camp 1/2 mile east, the stranger said from the doorway, his broad frame blocking most of the night sky. Tents, fires, supplies. She can recover there. And then what? Elira's voice was sharp. I'm supposed to just trust you? I don't even know who you are. The warriors outside had gone quiet. Even Jorvin paused his work. The stranger stepped into the mill and the space seemed to shrink around him. He moved like a predator, controlled, deliberate, and aware of exactly how much danger he represented. My name is Theron Valdris. He let the words land. Alpha King of the Northern Territories. The ground tilted beneath Elira's feet. She'd heard the name. Everyone had. The Alpha King who'd united the fractured northern packs through diplomacy where possible, and violence where necessary. Who'd built a kingdom from chaos. Who was said to be ruthless, brilliant, and impossible to deceive. And he was standing in a ruined mill, asking for her help. Your Majesty. The title felt foreign on her tongue. Why would a king need a banished Omega? I told you. Someone I love is dying. Theron's expression didn't waver, but she caught the fracture beneath the surface. Exhaustion and desperation held together by sheer will. My mother. She was poisoned 3 months ago. His voice dropped low. Slow acting, undetectable, designed to look like natural illness. Every healer in my kingdom has tried. Every medicine, every remedy. Nothing works. He paused. But the poison is magical in nature, and I believe your gift can burn it out of her blood. You believe. You don't know. No, he admitted. I don't. But I've exhausted every certainty. Faith is all I have left. Neve stirred on the sacking, her breathing slightly easier already from whatever Jorvin had given her. Elira looked at her daughter, at the fragile life she'd protected through 5 years of running, hiding, starving. If I come with you, she said slowly, what do I get in return? Name your price. Protection. A home where my daughter can grow up without fear, where no one can touch us. Not Aldrich, not anyone. Theron nodded once. Done. And if I can't save her? If your mother dies despite my gift? Something shifted in his gray eyes. Then you'll still have my protection. This isn't a trap, Elira. Help me or don't. Either way, your daughter will have a safe place to heal. It was too easy, too generous. Every instinct screamed that powerful men always wanted more than they offered. But Neve coughed again, and the sound made the decision for her. I'll try, Elira said. That's all I can promise. Theron extended his hand. That's all I ask. When her fingers touched his, heat sparked through her palm and raced up her arm, a jolt of recognition so intense it stole her breath. Theron's hand tightened on hers, his eyes widening almost imperceptibly. The mate bond. No. Impossible. Not now. Not him. Not. Elira yanked her hand back, heart pounding. Theron's expression had gone carefully blank. Neither of them said a word. The ride to camp was silent. Elira sat before one of Theron's warriors on a gray mare. Neve bundled against her chest, wrapped in a fur-lined cloak that smelled of cedar and wood smoke. The fever had eased slightly, Jorvin's herbs working their slow magic, but her daughter's body still trembled with residual chills. Theron rode ahead, his back rigid, never once glancing behind. Good. Whatever had passed between them in the mill, that inexplicable spark, was better left unexamined. Elira had survived this long by keeping her walls intact. She wasn't about to let a single touch demolish them. The camp materialized through the trees like a small village. Tents of oiled canvas circled a central fire, and warriors moved between them with quiet efficiency. When Theron dismounted, everyone stopped. Not in fear, in respect. Prepare the healer's tent, he commanded. Fresh bedding, warm broth, whatever the child needs. A woman with iron-gray hair cropped close to her skull stepped forward. Your Majesty, we weren't expecting... Plans change, Marin. His tone softened almost imperceptibly. See that they're comfortable. Marin's gaze found Elira, assessing, curious, but not unkind. This way. The tent was larger than Elira expected, with a brazier already glowing and thick furs piled on a low cot. She laid Neve down gently, brushing damp hair from her daughter's forehead. You'll stay here tonight, Theron said from the entrance. Tomorrow, if your daughter is strong enough, we ride for Valdris Keep. My mother doesn't have much time. Elira turned to face him. I need to understand what I'm agreeing to. Properly. Theron stepped inside, letting the tent flap fall closed behind him. The space shrank instantly. You heal my mother. In exchange, you and your daughter receive permanent sanctuary in my territory. Land. A home. Protection under my name. No one, not Aldrich, not any Alpha, will touch you without answering to me. For how long? Forever. The word was absolute. This isn't a transaction with an expiration, Elira. I'm offering you a life. Her throat tightened. A life. She'd stopped believing in such things. And if I fail? Then you'll have failed trying. He held her gaze. The protection stands regardless. She searched his face for the lie, the catch, and the hidden blade. Found nothing but exhaustion and desperate sincerity. I want your oath, she said quietly. A blood oath. Unbreakable. Theron didn't hesitate. He drew a knife from his belt and cut his palm in one clean motion. Blood welled dark against his skin. I swear it. Elira took the knife. The blade bit into her flesh, sharp and certain. When she pressed her palm to his, the bond flared again. Stronger this time, rushing through her veins like liquid fire. Theron went still, his fingers tightening around hers. For one endless moment, neither pulled away. Then Neve whimpered in her sleep, and the spell shattered. Elira stepped back, heart racing, palm throbbing. Tomorrow, she managed. Theron nodded once and left without another word. But long after he was gone, Elira could still feel his heartbeat pulsing against her hand. Neve's fever broke at dawn. Elira woke to find her daughter sitting up, pale but alert, asking for food in a voice that was almost strong. The relief hit so hard, she had to press a hand to her mouth to keep from sobbing. "Mama?" Neve's small brow furrowed. "Why are you crying?" "Because I'm happy, little moon." Alira pulled her close. So happy. Marin brought breakfast, warm porridge with honey, fresh bread, strips of salted meat. Neve ate ravenously while Elira forced herself to do the same, knowing she'd need strength for whatever came next. The journey to Valdris Keep took 2 days. They traveled through mountain passes and ancient forests, the landscape growing wilder and more beautiful with each mile. Neve rode with Jorvin now, chattering endlessly about the birds and the snow and the horses. The old healer answered her questions with patient amusement, and something loosened in Elira's chest watching them. Theron kept his distance. He rode at the front of the column, occasionally issuing orders or consulting with his warriors, but never approaching Elira directly. She told herself she was grateful for the space. She was lying. On the second evening, the forest opened onto a vast valley, and Elira saw the keep for the first time. It rose from the mountainside like it had grown there, dark stone towers and sweeping battlements, windows glowing amber in the fading light. A river curved around its base, and the surrounding village sprawled in orderly clusters of timber and thatch. "It's a castle," Neve breathed. "A real castle." "That's home," Jorvin said softly. "Has been for 300 years. Home. The word felt foreign. Elira hadn't had a home since Thornwick cast her out. They crossed a stone bridge and passed through gates that groaned open at Theron's approach. Inside the walls, the courtyard bustled with controlled activity. Stable hands taking horses, servants carrying supplies, children chasing each other near an ice-rimmed fountain. Not a fortress. A community. A young woman rushed forward as Theron dismounted. "Your Majesty, your mother. She's worse. The physicians say perhaps days, maybe less." The color drained from Theron's face, but his voice remained steady. "Prepare the Queen's chamber. The healer starts tonight." He turned to Elira, and for the first time since the mill, their eyes met fully. "I know you're tired," he said quietly. "I know this isn't fair, but take me to her." Something flickered across his features, gratitude, relief, and beneath it, that same desperate hope she'd seen in the mill. "This way." A woman appeared at Elira's elbow, middle-aged, with warm brown skin and kind eyes. "I'm Desta. I'll watch your daughter while you work. She'll be safe, I promise." Elira hesitated. Leaving Neve with strangers went against every survival instinct she'd honed. But Neve was already reaching for Desta's hand, drawn by some instinct of her own. "Go help the sick lady, Mama." Her daughter's voice was solemn. "I'll be brave." Elira knelt and kissed her forehead. "You're always brave." Then she followed Theron into the castle, toward a dying queen and a gift she'd spent 5 years trying to forget. The queen's chamber smelled of sickness and herbs and slow decay. Elira paused in the doorway, letting her eyes adjust to the dim light. Heavy curtains blocked the windows, and candles flickered on every surface, casting dancing shadows across silk wallpaper and velvet furnishings. And on the bed, a woman who had clearly once been beautiful. Queen Isolde was perhaps 55, with silver-streaked dark hair spread across her pillows and skin so pale it seemed translucent. Her breathing was shallow, labored, each exhale a small battle. But even in illness, there was strength in her face, a stubborn vitality refusing to surrender. Theron crossed to her bedside and took her hand. "Mother, I've brought someone who might help." The queen's eyes opened, gray like her son's, but clouded with pain. "Another healer? Theron, my love, you need to stop." "She's different." His voice faltered slightly. "Please, let her try." Isolde's gaze drifted to Elira, assessing despite her weakness. "You're the Omega, the banished one." "Yes, Your Majesty." "They say you work miracles." "They exaggerate." Elira moved closer. "But I can see what others can't. May I touch you?" A faint smile crossed Isolde's lips. Straight to business. I like that. Yes, child. Do what you must. Elira sat on the edge of the bed and placed her hands on the queen's arm. She closed her eyes, reaching for that place inside herself where the gift lived. That strange awareness that let her feel the broken places in a body, the discord, the damage. What she found made her stomach lurch. The poison was everywhere, not concentrated in one organ or system, but threaded through Isolde's blood like dark vines, wrapped around her heart, her lungs, her spine. Wherever Elira's awareness touched, she felt it pulsing, malevolent, patient, designed not to kill quickly but to destroy slowly. And there was something else, something that made her blood run cold. She knew this poison. Before we continue, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Elira opened her eyes, fighting to keep her expression neutral. I need to speak with you. Privately. Theron's brow furrowed. Anything you have to say. Privately. She held his gaze. Now. Something in her tone must have convinced him. He leaned down to kiss his mother's forehead, then followed Elira into the adjoining sitting room. The moment the door closed, she turned on him. This poison. Where exactly did it come from? We don't know. She fell ill after a diplomatic banquet. We assumed contaminated food, but we couldn't trace it. Who prepared the banquet? Our own kitchens. Staff we've trusted for years. And the guests? Theron's jaw tightened. Representatives from a dozen territories, including... He stopped. Including who? Aldrich. The name dropped like a stone. He came to negotiate trade agreements, stayed for 3 days. Elira's hands were shaking. This poison isn't from your kingdom, Theron. It's from Thornwick. It's called Widow's Thread, a closely guarded secret passed down through their healers for generations. She swallowed hard. I know because they tried to teach me to make it. When I refused, that's when Aldrich started calling me an abomination. Theron went very still. You're saying Aldrich poisoned my mother. I'm saying someone from Thornwick did. Someone with access to knowledge that shouldn't exist outside their pack. Elira's mind raced. There's more. This poison was designed specifically to resist healing magic. Whoever created it knew you'd eventually find someone like me. They wanted to make sure I'd fail. Can you counter it? Maybe. The threads are deep, and pulling them out could kill her faster than leaving them in. She met his eyes. I need time to study it, understand the pattern. Days at least. She might not have days. I know. Elira's voice softened despite herself. But if I rush this, I'll kill her for certain. Give me time to find the right approach. Please. Theron turned away, one hand pressed to his forehead. When he spoke again, his voice was ragged. Aldrich visited 6 months ago. He was charming, cooperative, and eager to mend relations. A bitter laugh escaped him. I thought he'd changed. I invited a viper into my home and let him strike at the person I love most. You couldn't have known. I should have. He looked at her, and the anguish in his eyes stole her breath. Everyone I trust eventually becomes a weapon aimed at my heart. Elira thought of Neve sleeping somewhere in this castle, vulnerable and trusting. Thought of the bond thrumming between her and this broken king. Not everyone, she said quietly. Theron stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out without a word. The next 4 days fell into a rhythm. Mornings, Elira worked on Isolde. She'd discovered that the widow's thread couldn't be pulled out all at once, but it could be burned away in fragments, tiny pieces at a time, like cutting through a net one strand at a time. Each session left her drained, shaking, and barely able to stand. But each session also brought color back to the queen's cheeks, strength back to her voice. You're killing yourself, Isolde observed on the 3rd morning, her gray eyes sharp despite her weakness. I can see it. I'm fine. You're lying. The queen's hand found hers, surprisingly strong. My son chose well, bringing you here. But I won't have my life purchased with yours. It's not... I've been watching you, Elira. The way you look at your daughter. The way you flinch when anyone moves too quickly. Isolde's voice softened. Someone hurt you badly. Made you believe you had to earn your right to exist. Illyra's throat closed. You don't, Isolde continued. Whatever you've been told, whatever Aldrich made you believe, your worth isn't measured by what you can give. It simply is. The words cracked something open in Illyra's chest. She'd spent so long surviving that she'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen. Afternoons belonged to Neve. The little girl had blossomed in the keep's warmth. She followed Desta everywhere, helped in the kitchens, played with the stable cats, and asked endless questions about everything. The castle staff had adopted her completely, slipping her treats and teaching her songs. Mama, did you know there's a library with 1,000 books? Neve's eyes were wide as saucers. Desta says I can learn to read them all. Would you like that? More than anything. Illyra watched her daughter spin through the corridors, laughing, fearless, and felt something she'd almost forgotten. Hope. Evenings were harder. Theron had been avoiding her since their conversation in the sitting room. She caught glimpses of him in the corridors, across the great hall during meals, always watching but never approaching. The bond hummed constantly between them, a low vibration she couldn't ignore. On the fourth night, she found him on the battlements. He stood alone, staring out at the moonlit valley, his breath clouding in the bitter cold. He didn't turn when she approached, but she saw his shoulders tense. You're supposed to be resting, he said. So are you. Silence stretched between them. Below, the village lights twinkled like earthbound stars. My mother says you're making progress, Theron finally said. She says she can feel the poison retreating. Slowly, but yes. She also says you're pushing too hard, that you collapse after every session. She worries too much. Theron turned then, and the moonlight caught the exhaustion in his face. She's not the only one. Illyra's heart stumbled. You've been avoiding me. Yes. Why? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he spoke, his voice was raw with restraint. Because every time I'm near you, I want things I have no right to want. And you've already been hurt by one alpha who took what wasn't freely given. His hands clenched on the stone wall. I won't be another monster in your story, Illyra. The confession hung in the winter air. You're not a monster, she said softly. You don't know that. I do. She stepped closer. Monsters don't bring healers for sick children. They don't offer sanctuary without conditions. They don't avoid someone because they're afraid of causing harm. Theron looked at her, and the vulnerability in his expression made her chest ache. What if I fail you? What if you don't? Illyra. Her name sounded like a prayer on his lips. I need you to understand something. She waited, heart pounding. When they told me about you, about a healer banished for her gift, surviving alone with a child, I expected someone broken, someone who'd given up. He shook his head slowly. Instead, I found a woman who built a life from nothing, who protected her daughter against impossible odds, who walked into my mother's chamber knowing she might fail and tried anyway. His hand lifted, hovering near her cheek, but not quite touching. You terrify me, he admitted. Not because of what you can do, because of who you are. Because the bond recognized you the moment our hands touched, and I've been fighting it ever since, trying to give you space, trying to let you choose without pressure. What if I want to choose? Theron's breath hitched. Then I need to know it's real. Not gratitude, not obligation, not the bond making you feel things that aren't. Illyra kissed him. She rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his, cutting off his words, his doubts, his careful control. For one heartbeat he stood frozen. Then his arms came around her, pulling her close, and he kissed her back with a desperation that made her knees weak. It wasn't gentle. It was consuming. 5 years of loneliness meeting months of desperate searching. 2 broken people finding something whole in each other. His hands tangled in her hair, her fingers gripped his shoulders, and the bond between them blazed so bright she could feel it rewriting her very soul. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, Theron pressed his forehead to hers. "Tell me that was real," he breathed. "It was real. Tell me you felt it too." "I've felt it since the mill." Elira pulled back to meet his eyes. "I've been fighting it just as hard as you." "Why?" "Because I've spent 5 years learning that hope is dangerous, that trusting people gets you cast out, abandoned, left with nothing." Her voice wavered. "I told myself I'd never let anyone have that power over me again. And now?" She touched his face, tracing the scar along his jaw. "Now I think maybe some things are worth the risk." Theron turned his head to press a kiss to her palm. "I won't hurt you, Elira. I'd cut off my own hand first." "I believe you." And she did. Terrifyingly, completely. "Stay," he said, the word thick with longing. "Not for 7 days or until my mother recovers. Stay because you want to. Because Neve deserves a home and you deserve peace, and I—" He stopped, seeming to struggle for words. "I can't imagine this castle without you in it anymore." "Theron, you don't have to answer now." He caught her hands, holding them against his chest where she could feel his heart hammering. "Finish healing my mother. Take time to breathe. But when it's done, when there's no debt or obligation or crisis pressing down on us, let me ask you properly." Elira thought of all the reasons to refuse, the danger of wanting too much, the risk of building a life that could be torn away, the voice in her head that still whispered she wasn't worthy of this. Then she thought of Neve, blossoming in these walls, of Isolde's gentle wisdom, of the way Theron looked at her like she was something precious instead of something broken. "Ask me now," she whispered. His eyes widened. "Elira, I've spent 5 years waiting for the right moment. There is no right moment. There's just this. You, me, a choice." She squeezed his hands. "Ask me." Theron's smile broke across his face like sunrise. "Stay with me. Not as a guest or a healer or an obligation. Stay as my partner, my equal, my—" He took a shaky breath. "My mate. If you'll have me." "Yes." He kissed her again, softer this time, like a vow sealed in breath and warmth. The battlements dissolved around them. The cold ceased to matter. There was only this. 2 souls recognizing each other after lifetimes of searching. When they finally separated, Theron kept her hand in his. "Fair warning," he murmured. "My mother is going to be insufferable about this. She's been asking about you since the first day." Elira laughed, the sound surprising her. "I think I can handle your mother." "You can handle anything." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "That's what I love about you." Love. The word hung between them, new and fragile, and impossibly bright. Elira smiled. "Take me inside, it's freezing up here." "As my lady commands." They walked back through the castle, fingers intertwined and the bond humming with contentment. For the first time in 5 years, Elira didn't feel like running. Everything shattered the next morning. Elira woke to screaming. She was out of bed instantly, heart seizing, every instinct screaming one word: Neve. The corridor was chaos. Servants running, warriors shouting, smoke curling from somewhere below. Elira fought through the crowd, searching desperately for her daughter's face. "Mama!" Neve's voice cut through the noise. Elira spun to find Desta carrying the girl toward her, both of them covered in soot. "What happened?" Elira grabbed her daughter, clutching her close. "Fire in the east wing," Desta panted. "And Elira, there are men inside the walls. Raiders, wearing Thornwick colors." Elira's blood turned to ice. "Where's Theron?" "Fighting. They came through the servants' entrance. Someone let them in." A traitor. Someone inside the keep had opened the gates. "Take Neve to the Queen's chamber," Elira ordered. "Bar the door. Don't let anyone in except me or Theron." "Mama, no!" Neve clung to her. "Don't leave me." Elira knelt, framing her daughter's face. I need to help people, little moon. I need you to be brave just a little longer. Can you do that? Tears streamed down Neve's cheeks, but she nodded. I'll come back. I promise. She kissed her daughter's forehead and ran toward the smoke. The east wing was burning. Warriors clashed in the corridors, steel ringing against steel. Illyra pressed herself against the wall, searching the chaos for Theron's familiar form. She found him in the Great Hall, fighting back-to-back with Jorvin against 6 attackers. Blood streamed from a cut on his arm, but he moved with lethal grace, his blade singing through the air. Then she saw him, Aldrich. He stood across the hall, watching the fight with cold satisfaction. His eyes found hers, and a smile curved his lips. There she is, he called, the abomination who should have stayed buried. Theron's head snapped toward her. Illyra, run! But Aldrich was already moving, 2 of his warriors flanking him as he advanced toward her. You think you can hide behind a king? Aldrich's voice dripped contempt. You're nothing, a defective Omega with a parlor trick. And when I'm done here, your daughter will... He never finished the sentence. Illyra's gift surged, not to heal, but to harm. She'd never used it this way, never dared. But the threat to Neve unlocked something primal, something savage. She grabbed Aldrich's wrist as he reached for her, and she pushed. Every wound he'd ever taken, every scar, every healed bone, she tore them open. Aldrich screamed, crumpling to his knees as his body betrayed him. Blood bloomed through his shirt from injuries years old. Touch my daughter, Illyra said quietly, and I'll unravel you cell by cell. Aldrich looked up at her with pure terror, and then Theron's blade was at his throat. Call off your men, Theron commanded, now. Aldrich laughed weakly, blood dripping from his mouth. You think this is about men? This is about cleansing corruption. Your mother should have died months ago. Your kingdom should have crumbled. But you kept fighting. Kept searching. Who helped you? Theron pressed the blade harder. Someone opened our gates. Who? Aldrich's eyes slid sideways, toward a figure in the shadows. Marin. Illyra's stomach dropped, the iron-haired warrior who'd welcomed them at camp. Who'd seemed so capable, so trusted. Why? The word tore from Theron's throat. Marin's expression was cold. Because your father killed my brother. Because you built your throne on bones and called it peace. Because Aldrich promised me justice. He promised you lies. Maybe. Marin drew her sword. But at least I'll die having tried. She lunged. Jorvin intercepted her, their blades clashing. More warriors poured into the hall, but it was impossible to tell ally from enemy. Chaos reigned. We need to end this, Illyra shouted. The poison. If I can prove Aldrich created it, prove he attacked your mother. The journal? Theron's eyes widened. Aldrich keeps records of everything. If there's evidence, it'll be on him. Illyra looked at the bleeding Alpha still on his knees. May I? Do it. She grabbed Aldrich's coat, searching the pockets. Her fingers closed around leather, a small bound book, filled with cramped handwriting. She flipped through the pages. Formulas, dates, names, everything documented with meticulous precision. It's here, she breathed. All of it. The poison, the timing, even payment records to Marin. Aldrich's face went gray. That proves nothing. It proves everything. Theron hauled him to his feet. Your own arrogance damns you. Around them, the fighting was dying down. Theron's warriors had gained the upper hand. Marin was on her knees with a blade at her throat, and the Thornwick raiders were surrendering one by one. Lock them in the dungeons, Theron commanded. All of them. We'll hold formal trials at dawn. He turned to Illyra, blood-splattered and fierce, and looking at her like she'd hung the moon. Are you hurt? No. Neve? Safe. I had guards at my mother's door the moment the alarm sounded. He pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. It's over. Is it? The main threat is ended. The rest is politics and paperwork. He almost smiled. Are you ready for the boring part? Elira laughed despite everything. I think I can handle boring. The trials took 3 days. Aldrich stood before the assembled court, chains on his wrists, arrogance stripped away. The evidence was irrefutable. His own journal, testimony from captured raiders, Elira's identification of the widow's thread poison. You are charged with attempted assassination of Queen Isolde, Theron announced, his voice carrying through the Great Hall. With conspiracy against the Northern Territories, with ordering the banishment of an innocent Omega under false pretenses, and with attacking this keep in an act of war. Aldrich sneered. She is not innocent. Her gift is unnatural, dangerous. Her gift saved my mother's life. Theron's tone could have frozen fire, while yours nearly destroyed everything. I was protecting my people. You were protecting your power. Elira stepped forward, and the court fell silent. You cast me out because I refused to make poisons for you, because I wouldn't use my gift to kill. You called me abomination, burned my home, and forced me to run for 5 years with a newborn child. Her voice shook, but she held her ground. You told everyone I was dangerous, cursed, that my banishment was justice. She met his eyes. But the only curse in Thornwick was you. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The evidence speaks clearly, the head counselor announced. Aldrich of Thornwick, do you have anything to say in your defense? Aldrich's lip curled. I'd do it again. Every choice, every action. Your precious king is weak. His mother is weak. And that Omega... Enough. Theron's voice cracked like a whip. The council has heard sufficient testimony. We will deliberate and render judgment. The deliberation lasted an hour. When the council returned, their verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. The sentence is death. Aldrich's execution took place at dawn the following day. Elira didn't attend. She'd endured enough of Aldrich through 5 years of fear and running. She didn't need to watch him die. Instead, she sat with Isolde, whose recovery had accelerated dramatically since Aldrich's capture. The queen was sitting up now, color in her cheeks, fire back in her eyes. You know, Isolde said, sipping broth, when Theron first told me about you, I was skeptical. Another healer, another desperate attempt. I'd stopped believing in miracles. And now? Isolde smiled. Now I believe in you. Which is better than miracles. Miracles are unpredictable. You're stubborn and practical, and exactly what my son needs. Elira felt her cheeks warm. I don't know about that. I do. Isolde's hand found hers. I've watched him become hard over the years. Watched the crown weigh him down, the betrayals make him cold. But with you, he laughs again. Hopes again. Her eyes glistened. You gave me my son back, Elira. That's worth more than my life. The door opened and Neve burst in, trailing ribbons and breathless excitement. Mama, Desta says there's going to be a celebration, with music and dancing and cake. Is there now? For you. Neve bounced onto the bed, careful not to jostle the queen. Because you saved everyone. Isolde laughed, the sound rich and warm. She's not wrong. The castle is preparing quite the feast. Elira looked at her daughter, bright-eyed, fearless, finally home, and felt tears prick her eyes. Are you happy, little moon? Neve considered the question seriously. I have a room with a window that looks at mountains. Desta is teaching me to read. Jorvin lets me feed the horses. And you smile now, Mama. Really smile. She wrapped her small arms around Elira's neck. I think this is the happiest ever. Later that evening, Theron found Elira on the battlements. Their spot now. It's done, he said, his voice low as he joined her at the wall. Aldrich is gone. Marin will spend her life in exile. The Thornwick raiders have been sent home with a very clear message about what happens to those who attack my kingdom. And Thornwick itself? Under new leadership, Aldrich's brother has taken over. A decent man, by all accounts. He's already sent formal apologies and offers of reparation. Including for me? Theron turned to face her. Including for you. Full pardon, restoration of status, and compensation for what you lost. He paused. If you want it. I don't need their apology. Elira looked out at the valley. I needed to survive. I did. That's enough. You did more than survive. Theron's hand covered hers on the cold stone. You thrived. And now? Now you get to live. He smiled, soft and real. No more running. No more hiding. Just living. Elira leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. I don't know how to do that, she admitted. Neither do I. His arm came around her shoulders. We'll figure it out together. 1 month later, Isolde declared herself fully healed. The announcement came at breakfast, delivered with the Queen's characteristic bluntness. I'm not dying anymore, so everyone can stop hovering. I want to ride my horse, eat real food, and see my son properly bonded before I actually do expire of old age. Theron choked on his tea. Elira smiled into her porridge. What? Isolde demanded. You've been dancing around each other for weeks. The entire castle is taking bets on when you'll finally make it official. Mother. Don't mother me. You love her. She loves you. The bond is so obvious it practically glows. Isolde pointed her spoon at Elira. Tell him. Tell him what, Your Majesty? That you're staying. That this is home. That you're done pretending you're still deciding. Elira met Theron's eyes across the table. He looked terrified and hopeful in equal measure. I'm staying, she said simply. I decided weeks ago. The hope won. Theron's smile was blinding. Then marry me. Tonight. Tomorrow, whenever you want. I don't care about ceremonies or protocols. I just want you. Officially, permanently, in whatever way you'll have me. Tonight is impractical, Isolde interjected. There are decorations to arrange, guests to summon, a dress to prepare. Give me 1 week. 1 week, Niamh agreed solemnly. She'd been listening from her spot beside Desta. That's enough time to practice being a flower girl. Elira laughed, the sound bubbling up from somewhere deep. 1 week, then. Theron crossed the room in 3 strides and kissed her, heedless of the audience. Niamh giggled, Desta applauded, and Isolde nodded with profound satisfaction. Finally, the Queen said, now, about grandchildren. Mother! The bonding ceremony took place under a full moon in the castle's ancient garden where Valdris kings had married for 300 years. Elira wore deep green silk, threaded with silver that caught the moonlight. Niamh scattered flower petals down the aisle, taking her role with tremendous seriousness. Isolde watched from a cushioned chair, tears streaming freely down her cheeks. And Theron waited at the altar, looking at Elira like she was every answer to every question he'd ever asked. The vows were simple. I choose you, Theron said, his voice thick with emotion. Not because of duty or bond or circumstance, because you walked into my life with fire in your eyes and healing in your hands, and I've never been the same. I choose you, Elira replied, her own tears falling. Because you saw me when I was invisible. Because you offered shelter and gave me home. Because you loved my daughter before you loved me, and that told me everything about who you are. When they pressed their palms together, the same hands that had sealed a desperate bargain in a frozen mill, the bond blazed complete. Not a chain, but a bridge. Not ownership, but partnership. Theron kissed her as the crowd cheered, and Elira kissed him back with everything she had. The celebration lasted until dawn. There was music and dancing, feasting and laughter. Niamh fell asleep in Yorvin's arms, exhausted from dancing. Isolde held court from her chair, accepting congratulations with regal grace. And Theron never let go of Elira's hand. Later, much later, they slipped away to their chambers. Theron loved her slowly, reverently, mapping every inch of her skin like she was sacred text, and Elira loved him back with a ferocity that surprised them both. 5 years of walls crumbling into something new and terrifying and wonderful. Afterward, tangled in silk sheets, Elira traced the scar on his jaw. Tell me something I don't know, she whispered. Theron considered. The night I found you in the mill, I almost didn't knock. What? I'd been searching for so long, disappointed so many times. I stood outside that door for 10 minutes, telling myself this would be another dead end. His arms tightened around her. I'm so glad I knocked. Alira smiled against his chest. I'm so glad you said please. Please? In the mill. You could have commanded, ordered, demanded. Instead, you said please. She lifted her head to meet his eyes. That's when I knew you were different. One word. One word changed everything. Theron pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her hair. Your turn. Tell me something. Alira was quiet for a moment, listening to his heartbeat. The night of the attack, when Aldrich threatened Neve, I felt my gift do something it had never done before. Something violent. She swallowed. It scared me. You protected your daughter. I nearly killed him. And I would have helped you finish it. Theron's voice held no judgment. Protecting the ones we love isn't violence, Alira. It's survival. It's strength. I don't want to be someone who hurts people. You're not. You're someone who heals. What happened with Aldrich was extraordinary circumstances. He tilted her chin up. You're a miracle, not a monster. Never forget that. She kissed him softly. I love you. I love you more. Impossible. Watch me prove it. Every day for the rest of our lives. Alira smiled, settling into his warmth, feeling the bond hum with contentment. She thought about the woman she'd been, frozen, desperate, begging for shelter in that crumbling mill. That woman wouldn't recognize her now, wouldn't believe this was possible. But it was. The Alpha King had arrived with 12 warriors, and she'd expected death. Instead, he'd offered life, and she'd been brave enough to take it. 1 year later, Alira stood on the battlements with Neve, watching riders approach from the east. Who are they, Mama? Visitors from Thornwick. The new Alpha is coming to renew the peace treaties. Neve wrinkled her nose. The place that was mean to you? The place that made a mistake. Alira smoothed her daughter's hair. People can change, little moon. Whole kingdoms can change. That's worth believing in. Like Papa changed you? Alira smiled at the word. Neve had started calling Theron Papa 6 months ago, and he'd cried for an hour. He didn't change me. He just helped me remember who I always was. Who's that? Someone brave. Someone worthy. She squeezed her daughter's hand. Someone home. Footsteps approached, and then Theron's arms wrapped around them both. The delegation is early, he murmured against Alira's hair. Nervous? With you beside me? Never. They stood together as the sun climbed higher, a king, a queen, and a little girl who'd once begged for shelter and found a kingdom instead. We need shelter, Alira had said that frozen night, expecting nothing but another door closed in her face. The Alpha King had answered with 12 warriors, a desperate hope, and a love she'd never thought possible. Fair trade, she thought as Neve laughed and Theron held her close. The best trade she'd ever made.